Can you believe it? A seemingly ordinary, unremarkable truck can be transformed into a fully equipped studio apartment, sleeping, cooking, working, all packed into a tiny space. And the amazing thing is, he's not a professional, he doesn't have fancy tools, and he made mistakes many times, but in the end, he still did it. Today I'll review the entire journey from when the truck was empty to when it became a real mobile home. At the beginning, this vehicle was completely empty. No interior, no insulation, no electricity. Just dusty metal and an idea. This is what I find really interesting. Because most of us, when we look at this, would think, how can anyone live in this? But for this guy, it was an opportunity. His goal was clear: to have a place to sleep, a place to cook, a place to work, and to live there long term. At this point, everything is still very rough. An empty garage, some planks of wood, and an idea that's gradually taking shape. He starts with the most important part. He started with the most important part, the foundation and bed frame. A large plywood sheet was laid down as the floor. Nothing too complicated, but this is what will determine the entire structure above. What I find interesting here is, he didn't just do it haphazardly. He was calculating very carefully the height of the bed, the space underneath, and how to utilize every centimeter. In a small space like this, if you do it wrong from the start, almost everything that follows will be affected. It looks simple, just putting a few pieces of wood together. But in reality, this is the foundation for an entire mobile home. And then, after all the initial rough frames, things started to take shape. Each plank of wood was fitted onto each side of the vehicle. And for the first time, it no longer looked like a construction. It began to look like a house. I was truly surprised at this point, because just adding an outer wall completely changed the feeling, from a simple wooden frame to a solid, enclosed space with clear shapes. And this is also when everything became more real than ever before. No longer an idea, no longer a drawing. It was appearing right before my eyes. But along with that comes even greater pressure. Because from now on, every mistake will be much harder to correct. Every centimeter matters. He not only maximized the interior space but also began shaping the exterior structure by cladding the walls with horizontal wood panels. It looks simple, but it's these details that make the entire vehicle start to look more like a house. After the outer frame was almost complete, he moved on to building the roof. Each wooden beam was placed, creating a gently curved frame above. This will be the roof of the entire camper. Below, you can clearly see, the floor is finished, a bench runs along the sides of the vehicle, and the interior space is beginning to take shape. Interestingly, he didn't make the roof flat. Instead, he created a slight curve which helps with better drainage and makes the interior space look more spacious. Interestingly, he didn't make the roof flat. Instead, he created a slight curve which helps with better drainage and makes the interior space look more spacious. After the framework was complete, he began sealing off the entire interior space. The walls were clad, and the roof was completely covered. And for the first time, this space truly became a room. From this angle, you can see very clearly. On both sides there are benches, the window frames are open, and natural light begins to enter. This is extremely important, because in a small space like this, light is what prevents it from feeling cramped. He also started working on the ceiling, wiring, and preparing for the electrical system later. And this is one of my favorite moments, because from an initial rough framework, it now truly feels like a place to live. No longer under construction, but almost complete. As you can see here, the entire wall and ceiling are made from OSB wood. This is a type of engineered wood made from small wood chips, compressed with glue under high pressure. The advantages of this type of wood are, it's quite hard and strong, cheaper than natural wood, and very suitable for DIY projects like this. However, it also has one point to note, its water resistance isn't very good. Therefore, it usually requires additional painting or waterproofing to prevent mold and mildew in the long term. But in this case, using OSB is a very reasonable choice, because it's both cost-effective and strong enough for the entire structure, and when combined with light from the window. This type of wood also creates a very natural, intimate, and warm feeling. As can be seen, the entire structure is made of wood, with the support beams cut and fitted to the angles of the truck bed to maximize space utilization. This not only increases durability but also makes the surface look neater and more professional. This frame is extremely important, as it serves as both the foundation for the bed above and the storage space. Although it looks simple, he had to measure, cut, and test countless times to ensure everything fit perfectly into the car's interior. This was also one of the most time-consuming stages but entirely worth it, because if this part isn't secure, the entire build will be affected. At this stage, he begins erecting the vertical frame beams to shape the interior space. He can be seen using a drill to secure a wooden beam to the main frame of the vehicle. This step requires high precision, as these vertical beams will determine the shape and stability of the entire rear structure. If misaligned or uneven, parts like walls, shelves, or beds will be very difficult to assemble later. The interior space of the vehicle is quite cramped, so the work is not easy. The rear window was retained, both to let in natural light and to prevent the space from feeling cramped. This is a small but crucial detail, as it makes the mobile studio feel more airy and comfortable. The wooden frame was gradually completed, forming the skeleton for the entire living space at the back. Every piece of wood, every screw, contributed to transforming the original truck into a habitable place. This is the stage where everything began to take shape more clearly, no longer just an idea, but a reality. The rear structure of the truck is clearly enclosed, with exterior panels giving it the feel of a real small house. He's standing on a ladder inspecting and finishing the entrance door. This is one of the most important details, as it affects not only the aesthetics but also the safety and insulation of the entire interior space. The roof is designed with a slight slope, allowing for better water drainage during rain, while also giving it the feel of a small house. He's starting to paint the exterior to complete the look of his mobile home. He can be seen standing on a ladder, carefully painting the exterior panels. The paint not only makes the vehicle look neater and tidier, but also protects the wood surfaces from the elements like sun, rain, and humidity. The bright pink color makes the entire structure look like a real small house, rather than just a converted truck bed. This is an important step to enhance aesthetics and create a distinct home feel. From the outside, it's hard to tell this was once just an ordinary truck. The entire rear section has been transformed into a standalone room, complete with doors, walls, and a roof. The ladder at the back also shows he's still in the process of refining the final details, perhaps installing doors, checking hinges, or completing the frame. This is where the project truly becomes impressive. From a simple idea, it has now become a complete, usable living space. After completing the main frame, he moved on to a crucial detail, the door. Initially, he constructed the door frame using wooden planks, measuring and cutting each section to create a sturdy form. This part looks simple, but in reality, it requires a high degree of precision for the door to open and close smoothly. Then, he reinforced the back to provide screw points for the interior panels. This is a small step, but it makes the door much more robust. Next, he began assembling the wooden panels onto the door surface. Since there wasn't enough of one large panel, he had to divide it into many smaller pieces, fitting them together little by little until they fit perfectly. And surprisingly, When finished, the overall look was still very good, not at all rough. After fixing it in place, he proceeded to stain the door. This wood stain immediately made everything look much more premium, from a rough piece of wood to a real piece of furniture. But it didn't stop there. He continued to install the hinges, then tried lifting the door. And this is when he noticed a small problem. The door was quite heavy. However, after attaching it to the frame, everything worked very smoothly. He proceeded to install the door handle with the lock. Since he didn't have specialized tools, he had to use a regular drill. Drilling the holes little by little, it wasn't perfect, but he managed to install it eventually, and when he tested opening and closing it from the inside, the door worked perfectly, just like a real door. It had a lock, it had a handle, it felt secure. From a mere empty space, the camper now has something very important: privacy. And from here, it's no longer just a DIY project, it's starting to feel like a real home. At this stage, he begins working on the interior electrical system, one of the most crucial parts of the entire project. He can be seen holding electrical wires and preparing to run them through pre-calculated locations. The wiring is done quite carefully to ensure safety and convenience for future use. The wires will be neatly concealed within the walls and ceilings, making the space look tidier and more professional. At the same time, this also helps protect the electrical system from damage or malfunction. He had to carefully calculate the placement of lights, sockets, and electrical appliances to ensure everything worked efficiently in a small space. While it may seem simple, this step requires meticulous attention to detail and high precision. Even a small mistake could affect the entire system later on. This is the step that makes the mobile apartment not just a place to live, but also truly comfortable and modern. If there's one thing that determines whether this car is livable or not, it's insulation, because if you skip this step, during the day, the interior will be stiflingly hot like an oven. And at night, it will be freezing cold like a freezer. So he had no other choice. He began sealing every tiny gap, places where hot and cold air could seep in. Then he added layers of insulation, one piece at a time, covering the entire space. This work wasn't glamorous, but it laid the foundation for everything that followed. And then, he continued paneling the walls. Each piece of wood was placed, covering the initial rough metal. And at that very moment, the cold truck began to transform. No longer a vehicle, but gradually becoming like a real room. The space was still very raw at this point. Unfinished wood, inconsistent colors, and it still felt like an unfinished project. And this is when he made an important decision: paint the entire interior. He didn't choose overly bright colors. Instead, he went for light, clean, and pleasant tones. The goal was clear: to make the space look bigger, brighter, and more livable. Layer after layer of paint is applied to the wood surface, covering up cuts and minor imperfections from the construction process. And after just one coat of paint, everything changes completely. The space becomes neater, brighter, and much more lively. From a DIY project, it now begins to resemble a real living space. This isn't just about painting, it's the step that marks the point where this place is about to become home. From here, everything began to change completely. No longer were there scattered pieces of wood, no longer was it an unfinished construction site. Instead, each detail began to be completed. He added them one by one. A chair not just for sitting, but for relaxing, for enjoying the space. Cabinets to keep everything neat and organized. A small kitchen enough for cooking, enough for a normal life, a sink a small detail. But it makes everything feel so much more real. Lighting system making this space warm when night falls. And even a TV. It sounds simple, but when all those things are put together in one space, it feels completely different. It's no longer a truck, no longer a DIY project. It's a place where you can sleep, cook, work, and actually live in it. And at this very moment, everything changes, not because it becomes perfect, but because it becomes meaningful. Every item, every little corner, is the result of effort, of mistakes, of starting over many times. And from here, it's no longer just a project. It's a home, a small home on four wheels, but containing an entire journey behind it. man starts with almost nothing, no experience, no professional tools. Just an idea, and a determination to make it a reality. At this moment, he is installing a ventilation fan on the car roof, a small detail, but one that will decide everything. Just one gap, and rainwater could seep in, ruining the entire interior space he has painstakingly built. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry. Each strand of glue was applied slowly, evenly, carefully, ensuring there were no mistakes. No one guided him, no perfect blueprint, only trial and error, and lessons learned on his own. But perhaps that's what made everything more meaningful. Because for him, this wasn't just about installing a fan. It was about, step by step, transforming an ordinary car into a place to live, a place to call home. Each layer of coating was poured down slowly, precisely. No rush, because even a small mistake would ruin everything. The surface gradually became smooth and shiny, reflecting the light, and also reflecting the effort he had put in. From a simple piece of wood, it now gave off the warm feeling of a home. And in this moment the car truly began to come alive. He used a blowtorch to treat the surface. The flame glided gently over each corner. Each detail, tiny bubbles gradually disappeared. The surface slowly became clear, deep, and shiny like a mirror. The light from outside reflected onto the tabletop, making it no longer just an ordinary piece of wood. It became part of the space, something very alive. Just one coat of epoxy, and everything changes completely. It's not just the big things, but the small details that make the difference. Everything has to fit together, it has to be neat. It has to be perfect down to the millimeter. No one sees all of these things. But it is precisely these details that create the sense of meticulousness for the entire space. Before completely finishing, he returned to the exterior. Another coat of paint was applied, not just for aesthetics, but to protect the entire structure from sun, rain, and weather. Each brush stroke made the surface more even, clean, and polished. The small scratches, the imperfect details, are all dealt with one last time. This isn't just about painting. This is the step to lock in all the previous work. And when the final coat of paint dries, this little house is truly ready. The finishing details, the lighting, the curtains, and the smallest things, but it is these things that completely transform the space. From a cold, sterile metal box, it becomes a cozy, comfortable little studio on its wheels. The K Antiqua, TMT Chic Zitrung. Hen MT Kang Jian San ADG Chak Nang, Na Kang Hone Cho. Hang Na La CT, Wa Na Hot Yang. What I've learned: start simple, be prepared to make mistakes. Build a way of life, not just to look good. And most importantly, just start. If you've ever thought about doing something like this, consider this a sign for you, because if I can do it, you can too. Kang Sian and Hon Cho, Chisian and BTHU. Electricity, water, kitchen, bed, TV, a complete mobile home. From a cold, sterile metal box to a tiny studio on wheels. The first night here is a mix of excitement and some problems that arise. You'll quickly realize what works well, what doesn't, and even things you've forgotten. But that's all part of the journey. Start simply, accept making mistakes, build the way you live, not just for the sake of looking good. And now, everything is ready. The construction phase is over. But the real journey has just begun.